So just to introduce myself, my name is Rachel Tansey, and I work with Rutgers Cooperative Extension here in Monmouth County, right in Freehold. And if you're not familiar with us, we have three departments: the Agriculture and Natural Resources Department, which also is included of the Marine Sciences Department. We have our 4-H Youth Development Department, and then there is our Department of Family and Community Health Sciences, where we do nutrition, health, and wellness programming all throughout the county and throughout the state. All of our departments has a cooperative extension office in all of the 21 counties in the state. And here I'm located right in Freehold in the Ag Building. We have many partners that we work with, obviously, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, the County Board of Chosen Commissioners, and our National Institute of Food and Agriculture and USDA. So without, prolonging this any longer, I did want to just review our Justice for All poster and let you know we are an affirmative action, equal opportunity employer. And I just wanted to put this slide up now in case you wanted my information. You can have the email there and you can always contact me, but I'm going to jump to different slides so you can even ask for this again at the end, but I just wanted to show you that here. So I'm going to share over here these slides. This happens to be a program that was created by a colleague. Her name is Sherry Serignano, and it is part of our functional foods program. So we have a series of 6, and I'll go through those at the end, but this is one on chocolate. Being that chocolate tends to be a hot topic right now in February, we tend to get a lot of requests for this program, so that's great. And I just kind of wanted to go over with you a little bit about the background, the history, and how it might possibly even be a health food. So our objectives here today are to basically increase your knowledge about plant origin of chocolate, go over some of the historical facts, how it's processed and the preparation of what chocolate, how it begins and how it ends up as a chocolate product, understanding the research that's going on currently for it and any of those health benefits, and then also identify any recommendations we might have for having chocolate as part of your healthful diet. So this is a nice little poem that was written a while back. Oh, divine chocolate, they grind thee kneeling, beat thee with hands praying, and drink thee with eyes to heaven. Now I'll go over that a little bit more as we continue through to let you know basically how that sort of poem kind of came about. If you think about the processing and some of the, the way beat thee with hands praying, there's a process where your hands basically do this sort of motion, and it kind of helps you understand where the poem kind of began and how it came about. But chocolate has really been seen not only as a beverage, but it's been a currency. It's even been used as medicine, and of course we consume it as a wonderful, familiar chocolatey sensation that we love: the taste, the smell, all of the wonderful senses that it gives us, and it even helps our mental status as well. So chocolate cravings, in case you aren't familiar, I'm pretty sure most of us probably have had a craving once or twice, but about half of all of our food cravings are chocolate. So roughly speaking, 40% comes from females and 15% basically from males that have that chocolate craving. So why is this, there's been some research on this. Why is this basically something that would come about for particularly chocolate? Well, it could be due to maybe women with hormonal changes, and those cravings appear that it could possibly be like a learned behavior, that we have these hormonal changes that go on throughout our lives, and even for men as well. And this could be sort of one of those interactions that it gives that sense of comfort and that sense of happiness that we learn to create that craving for chocolate. Not necessarily a bad thing, so we're going to keep that in mind. It also might have some sort of psychoactive ingredient that helps induce happiness and helps that central nervous system be a stimulant. Chocolate has a little caffeine, and there's the hormones that are released in our brain that actually make us happy. So serotonin and dopamine, and even some of the opioids that are going on, and your endorphins, that happiness you get, that is actually real. And it does help boost your mental health and give you that sense of happiness. So these are actual real reasons to have the craving, and very much so that something like the theobromine and the caffeine, having that little bit of a stimulant, gives you that little pep. We're not talking a lot, but it will give you that sense of happiness. And that is why we crave it, because we're going to crave something that makes us feel better, correct? We're not going to have, oh, I feel like feeling, crappy today, so let's have something terrible. No, of course, we're always craving something that makes you feel wonderful, and chocolate might be one of them. So I just wanted to go over a little bit about the tree itself. So the Theobroma cacao tree is how chocolate is grown. So you can see here the little purplish reddish pods. That is your big long chocolate pod, and it gets to be quite big. The word Theobroma in Greek comes from food for the gods, foods of the gods, and then cacao is the Mayan term for chocolate. So right now in its form, it is just a cacao pod. Then it becomes this cauliflory, where those pods develop into little beautiful tiny flowers all over the tree, and it's basically coming right off the bark of the tree. And this flowering process then grow those pods that you saw in the last picture. So it grows from cushions on the tree trunks and the branches, so they can kind of be all over the place, and it's quite prevalent to see. Now the thing here is the temperatures that we need for chocolate trees to grow actually is about 20 degrees north and 20 degrees south of the equator. So our temperatures need to stay pretty much greater than 60 degrees. So unfortunately, we're probably not going to be growing these here in New Jersey. And you need that nice year-round moisture. So it's more of a tropical climate, but it would be wonderful to go some places where we'd be able to, see them and have them. But maybe, in Hawaii, there's possibility for having some of those trees growing, but not here in the mainland states. So it kind of is an industry that is interesting to get into, and we can see why many love it and where it's come from and how it's become such a wonderful, I guess, sort of a wonderful eccentric need that we have, but we don't really need it. However, we're going to go through some different ways where you can incorporate it into your diet. So the cacao pods, as I mentioned, grow directly from the trunk. And here's a picture that you can see here. There's quite a few growing on this trunk, and they could reach up to about a foot long. In the next picture, I will show you, but within each of these pods, so we're talking, a pretty decent size sort of fruit, that it has about 30 to 40 beans inside of each pod, and then some of the juicy pulp as well surrounding. So here is a pod, and it's obviously sliced in half, and all those little white cacao beans are right in the center there. So all of that is what we're going to use in order to create our chocolate. So just a little bit of our chocolate terminology. Cacao is the plant and its products before it's processed. So that, you can look at the spelling, it's C-A-C-A-O versus the next third bullet down, C-O-C-O-A. So cacao is the plant, is how it's grown. It's the Theobroma cacao tree. And then we take those little beans that you saw in the previous picture, and we are going to create them and shell them, and it's going to create the term cacao bean or a nib. So this picture over here on the right are those little cacao nibs. From that, we then can create different products. So the cocoa liquor is made from the grinding of your nibs, and you'll also get a cocoa butter or just plain cocoa that we use oftentimes in baking without the sugary additives, which is how we then create chocolate. So chocolate in and of itself doesn't come straight from the tree. You have to do some processing, albeit very delicious, wonderful processing, to then combine some of the liquor, some of the cocoa butter, added sugar, and create this solid food that we know and love as chocolate. So making of the chocolate, The process here is how they go about creating that wonderful chocolate, that we have used in for many years and in many different ways and forms. So it is first fermented, and the fermentation is about 5 to 6 days. And then it's also dried. And this is typically out on mats or trays in the sun for about 1 to 2 weeks. And then it goes through a roasting process, and that's about anywhere, it's very specific, 70 to 115 minutes, depending on the different temperatures that we're making the chocolate and what we're doing with it. So the processing is pretty strict as to how long it will be roasted. And then there's a process called winnowing, which is where the shell is then peeled off to leave you that little nib that I showed in the previous picture. So that winnowing is how then we'll take the nibs and grind it down to make cocoa powder, or you can make the cocoa liquor or the cocoa butter. And these are all different parts that are created in order for us to go about using it into chocolate. So the processing of the nibs is quite precise, as I mentioned, and when they're ground into the cocoa liquor, the liquor is then pressed to extract the butter, and it forms sort of like a cake, like a cocoa press cake. So by having all of that, plus your added sugar, and maybe, if you're going to flavor your chocolate or something like that, that's how you will create chocolate. So getting into a little bit of the history of chocolate, the Olmecs were the first to domesticate the Theobroma tree, and the classic Mayans were actually found to be the first to have the cacao written in either words or pictures. So they were using that term. And then the Aztecs actually were the first to use the seeds, or were found to use the seeds as currency and as money. And they prepared a chocolate beverage with many different varieties, at realizing that this would be, something that would be delicious. And then it was really the Spanish who were the first to bring those cacao beans to Spain. So the Spanish conquest. So they were able to grow it in a different area, and know that, it would be quite a wonderful process to have of their own. So the molinos, this is the whisk. This is part of that poem that I was talking about praying, because you take this whisk. This is a picture of a wooden whisk, and the way it's whisked together is basically between your two hands and rubbing them fast together to create this foamy chocolate drink. Now we're still looking at a foamy chocolate drink that is probably not super sweet. This is really just something that was used as a decadent type of drink, and it really had that heavy, kind of bitter almost chocolate taste, because we're not adding any sugars to it yet. So it's not until we get to that point that it would be that sweet, let's say, hot chocolate that we know and love. So as we continue on here, it was really Europe where chocolate became something for the elites, that it was consumed by the elite. It was even possibly seen as to have medicinal benefits, and it could possibly comfort liver issues, aid in your digestion. And of course, we know that it can make anyone happy, and they thought possibly even stronger as well. In America here, this is where chocolate manufactured here is actually done by power machinery. So it was the process in which it was all hand done, and I went through that with you. But now here in America, we said let's do things a little bit differently, and we have some power machinery that help us go about that process. And the Dutch processing is actually a new way to manufacture the cocoa powder to ease the chocolate production. So they were able to, kind of get some of the mechanics into a better way of working. And the Dutch chocolate is processed cocoa powder, and it leads to an easier production of the products, and it's mass produced. Chocolate slowly has become an affordable part of our population. And the first true solid chocolate bar was made in England in 1847. And the first milk chocolate was ever made in Switzerland in 1876. So chocolate today, this is the chocolate we love, right? That was a little bit of a history to just know where it came from, and it is a plant food. The cacao beans are harvested primarily in West Africa, and the leading countries for producing those cacao beans are listed here, and you can see those. And one of the leading countries that processing the cocoa is the Netherlands. So it is very interesting to see how it kind of moves about and how we're able to get the chocolate that we know today. So just a little bit more, just some facts for you here. Some of the top global confectionery companies are listed here. As you can see, Mars, I think we're all pretty familiar with that at 18,000 net sales. And then it goes down the list. I was actually a little bit interested to see where Hershey and Nestle, might fall, but you could see some of our US companies as well as, Italy, Japan, Switzerland, and things like that. So chocolate in your kitchen. This is the part we all are waiting for, right? So storing your chocolate is important because chocolate is very, it can absorb a lot of smells and flavors. And, if you've hopefully never done it, but if you were to store your chocolate, let's say next to your onions, it would probably have quite a horrific odor and possibly even taste like that, because we know our taste and smells are very closely related. So we want to make sure that we're storing our chocolate properly. We want it free from other odors in a well ventilated area and pretty much room temperature, anywhere from 65 to 68 degrees, as well as having your relative humidity below 50%, because we don't want it to be moist and get too hot and have that moisture build up on the chocolate. And then also you clearly want it out of direct sun for obvious reasons. But when you're melting chocolate, if you've done this and you've experienced the sadness that getting chocolate wet does, it seizes up and you cannot do anything with it. It just pretty much is done and you have to start over. But if you are melting chocolate, sometimes there are chocolates that are fine that if you put it in the microwave for like 30 seconds and you stir it another 30 seconds and stir it, you don't want to do too far because it will basically burn. But you also can do something like a double boiler where you're doing it on the stove, and you can create your own. You don't have to have the actual pot, where you just have, a pot at the bottom with a little bit of water. Bring it up to a nice slow rolling boil, not almost like a simmer with bubbles, not really too overly boiling. You don't want these big giant bubbles popping everywhere. And you can put like maybe a glass bowl on top and have your chocolate in that. You don't want the water to be able to touch the chocolate, because that is when it will seize up and you're not going to be able to use it. And you just want that nice little simmer at the bottom of the water going, and you have to constantly mix your chocolate or else it takes a lot longer to melt. But it does work lovely, and as long as you keep it dry, you're able to get a nice consistency of your chocolate melting. So there's also a little bit here I wanted to talk about this section on sustainability to educate you all on what is necessary on some of the labeling here. So a sustainable chocolate, we have a label that might be labeled as USDA organic, and these would be through the National Organic Program, the Quality Assurance International Group. And these are actual certain rules and regulations that help us know it's going through a certifying process. So it helps to be able to look them up and know that you're getting a good quality product that was grown in nice, healthy soil, and it meets all the requirements that their label, insists on. We also have the fair trade label here, and this is also according to strict standards, working in safe conditions, protecting the environment, building sustainable livelihoods, and empowering the communities to be able to do so as well. And they have wonderful products. So having this label wouldn't be a bad thing to have if you've never seen it. It's out there, but it's nice to have the knowledge to know that it is a wonderful certification for chocolate to have. So we also have our Rainforest Alliance, and this is an alliance between your farmers, your forest communities, companies, and consumers to protect your shade trees, help your wildlife thrive, conserve the natural resources, and improve the productivity and income potential. So we really, their motto is to create a world where people and nature thrive in harmony. I mean, that's just a wonderful way to go about life, right? So being that these trees have to be grown in a tropical climate, we want to make sure that they are, helping our environment stay strong, and we're able to continue about having them growing and getting our chocolate. So a little bit on the research on cocoa and chocolate here. Its possible health benefits have been studied extensively over the years and continues to be studied worldwide. So studies have demonstrated that cocoa and dark chocolate have positive health benefits when eaten in moderation as part of a healthful diet. This is a result of specific compounds in the chocolate that have been identified and studied. So here we have polyphenols, and found in many of our plant foods, a lot of our plant foods that are colorful. So we often say eating a rainbow, and no, I'm not talking about eating Skittles. Having a rainbow of colorful, vibrant plant foods, fruits and vegetables is really important, and you'll get things like the polyphenols that are very rich in your flavonols, and that is really found in your dark chocolate. So the higher content of dark chocolate, the more you'll have. If you get 60% or more, then milk chocolate is what's found in dark chocolate, which also, as I mentioned, plant products. So tea is a plant. It's a product that's grown. You also get about 75% more in your dark chocolate than you would in your black tea. And then a lot of people are very aware that red wine can have some of these benefits also. But again, dark chocolate has about 67%, it's not even reading properly, 87% more than red wine. So just knowing that dark chocolate, something we might all love, can have some wonderful health benefits is, brings a smile to my face. So having those antioxidant properties are really important for possible prevention of cancers, certain cancers, and also potentially benefit your heart health as well. Being that it's Heart Health Month, it's a wonderful time to try some new chocolates. If you're not someone who has a particular liking for dark chocolate, well, there's ways, there are different intensities as well. So there's ways that you can introduce it into your diet and then have it kind of build its receptiveness to your palate. So some of the possible health benefits here, as I mentioned, being heart disease, that studies indicate that dark chocolate can potentially lower your blood pressure, your triglycerides, and possibly help reduce the cholesterol levels. So we know as we get our cholesterol checked, you're often given a number, and let's just say the doctor says, oh, your cholesterol is good, it's 180. Okay, great. And that's wonderful. But then you really should be asking, what are my numbers? And your numbers meaning what is your HDL and what is your LDL? So HDL, I like to call it my happy cholesterol. And LDL, I call it the loser cholesterol. So we want our HDL cholesterol to be high, and we want our LDL cholesterol to be low. So here we're simply stating that some of the research has shown that dark chocolate could potentially help lower your LDL cholesterol. So help reducing that loser cholesterol, which is really important, because if your overall cholesterol is good, that's great, but it's really having those actual numbers to know where you stand within them. So having the consumption of chocolate is important also to note that we're talking about once a week or so, and about an ounce maybe or two of our chocolate would be the suggested recommendation. So we're not really talking about overindulging and having all this chocolate all the time, but there are things that you can definitely, a study had shown that having at least once a week of your chocolate may possibly reduce your risk for coronary artery disease. So the specific amounts, can vary, but we really want to make sure we're not overdoing it. So there's also possible benefits to help reduce your risk for diabetes. Studies might include things such as reducing your insulin resistance, stimulating your insulin secretion, also lowering your blood glucose levels. And that is, if you're not familiar, the levels they're checking when to find out whether you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, and help improve your glucose tolerance. So the specific benefits in prevention here are indicated above, and there are specific benefits for type 2 diabetes. So this is something that might be of interest to you, to be able to possibly prevent that in the future for yourself. Other possible health benefits would be surrounding the central nervous system, the immune function, and possible risks of cancer, as I mentioned, your skin protection, possibly lessen the symptoms of depression, which would make sense because we talked about our mental health and having those hormones, those happy hormones, increase, and then even potentially reduce your appetite and weight gain, just from the smell and taste of chocolate, having that sense of happiness. There are high flavanol content, as we mentioned, the antioxidants, and it could possibly, with the central nervous system, because we were talking about lowering your blood pressure and things like that, it could help reduce your risk for strokes as well. So we have a few groups here to discuss, and the Kuna Indians, they had health compared to our mainlanders, where they were able to compare what was going on with their systems, and they had lower rates of hypertension, which would be high blood pressure. About 2% lower of the population had lower rates of hypertension. These this group is from Panama, just so you know, and they also were able to see lower rates of diabetes, myocardial infarctions, strokes, and even possibly some cancers. So it's interesting to see that, you know, this group is really out, you know, on in islands over there in Panama, and their diets probably consist of a large plant life sort of diet. They probably eat much fish in their diet, and also if they're having some of the cocoa that is being formed in that area from the Theobroma trees, then it would be interesting to know that they had 10 times more cocoa than those of the mainlanders studied, and 4 times more fish, and about 2 times more fruit, just because of the environment they lived in. So are there any determinants to health? Well, there could be that some detriments here we wanted to go over. We want to look at the acne possibility. Evidence may link chocolate to acne. Is it concluded? We're not 100% sure. The GERD or gastroesophageal reflux could possibly be something that you would want to avoid the chocolate, because it can be a little bit more bitter, but there's really no proof of that yet. And then even migraines. Some people say chocolate gives them migraines. Sometimes chocolate can help with a migraine. It all depends on the person. And is there specific evidence that cocoa, again, we said cocoa, not chocolate, helps helps lead to weight gain? Well, not necessarily. So there's no specific evidence on that. But this is just some of the things that have come up that we have found. Maybe there's a suggestion to trigger a migraine, but the studies have been found to proven that chocolate and migraines are not really totally proven to be associated together, but I'm sure there's much studies on this that are going to continue and see how this might go about. So some conclusions here, just to go over what we were discussing. The possible benefits would be to your heart, diabetes prevention, stroke reduction, your immune function, which we can all use a little bit boost in our immune right now, right? Possible cancer prevention, our skin protection, and weight management. That's a good way to term it. So more research is obviously still needed. There's a lot of questions that still remain, and you know, we have to make sure that we're continuing with it to know how to determine how and why all this research is needed to provide information on the big question, which is how much chocolate. So is chocolate the new health food? Well, some things to consider of importance would be the possible health benefits. That's definitely a plus. Because it is high in fat, though, and often sugar and calories, it really should be taken into consideration to keep it in moderation. Researchers agree that more specific and larger studies are needed to know that before the recommendations for dark chocolate can be made. But in the meantime, we would say having chocolate, preferably dark chocolate, in moderation can be part of a healthful diet, as long as we're having a lot of our plant-based diets as well, and getting a lot of those nutrients and nutrition that we need. So not all chocolate is created equal. Here, I just wanted to show you the sort of graph that lets you see the percent of cacao, and this cacao is where we are talking about the health benefits. So by having milk chocolate, you can see there's just about 20% of the cacao in there. And then we go to our dark chocolate, which jumps well over 70%. And this is where we're getting most of our benefits. But then we can even go as high as baking chocolate. And if you've ever tasted baking chocolate, it's extremely bitter. There's really no sugar in there to sweeten it, but that is 100% of your cacao, and that's what makes it so bitter. And this process they use in order to create these chocolates, that's where it can possibly go down. So we're really looking at a good dark chocolate at about 70% or higher, which will give you some of those health benefits that we spoke of. So other components of cocoa. So we have some fats we talked about that are found in the cocoa butter. We have fiber, about 2 grams per tablespoon of cocoa. We even have some minerals that we need for our happiness of our systems and our bodies to go about our day. So you will find a little magnesium, potassium, calcium, copper, and even iron in some dark chocolate. It's actually considered a good source for iron. So again, we're having this in moderation, but there's only about 170 calories per ounce of dark chocolate. So again, your dark chocolate is that little bit, it's more on the bitter side than your milk chocolate. And that is really why it'll probably have less calories as well, because it'll have less fat and less sugar. So it's important to make note of that also that potassium we need to help keep our blood pressure in check. That's one of the reasons why they said chocolate could help lower your blood pressure. Calcium is a great option here we need for our bones, but take note, you also need vitamin D, which your body will create from the sun naturally, but also vitamin C to help your body absorb that calcium for your bones and your teeth. So choosing dark chocolate as part of a healthful diet, we want to make sure that we're having a strong plant-based diet and we create habits based around that. And eating chocolate is really important. Again, as I said, keeping it in moderation, but having a variety of foods within your diet. You want your lean proteins, you want whole grains, and a wonderful little snack that I love to make is taking dates. And if you slice a date in half and you pit it, and then you take just a smidge of peanut butter or any nut butter. If you can't have peanut butter, you can do like a sunflower butter or something like that, and fill the center of it out. Place them on a tray or a bowl or something. And then I drizzle dark chocolate, again, dark chocolate on top of them. It's sort of like a play on, they're supposed to be a fake Snickers, but I can't say that for sure, but I know it's delicious. Your date is very sweet, so that's a wonderful fibrous, good, healthy fruit. You're getting your protein from your peanut butter, and then you're getting all those wonderful antioxidants and polyphenols from your dark chocolate. And again, it's just a small little thing, maybe about an inch, but it's a nice little snack to have if you need to kind of get that sweet tooth. You could also drizzle it a little bit with honey. I've seen recipes like that, but I think it's perfectly sweet just with that sweetness from the date. But it's a great thing. You stick it in the refrigerator to help kind of solidify it, and then you can have it as a snack, just one or two. You have to be careful. It's a lot of fiber there in that date. So if you're interested to learn more about some of this information, here's a listing that you can see if you wanted to take a, picture of this or something. You can look these up and find out some more information. I'll just leave it up for a minute in case you're looking to take that picture. All right, so as I mentioned in the beginning, we have programs called Functional Foods, and this was where my dear colleague of mine, Sherry, had created this series to help about cancer prevention and healthful foods, of a functional food meaning one that actually is doing our bodies some good. So this is our chocolate that we discussed. We also have one on coffee and tea, berries, and then also we have one on vegetables and mushrooms or fungi.